Hey guys, welcome back to Radio 815, the podcast dedicated to discussing the work of Reddit director J.J. Abrams, as well as his creator, Bad Robot Universe. This is episode 167, and on this week's episode, I'm joined, as always, by my fellow co-host, Matt Crandall, and we will be discussing the Undercovers, episode 3, entitled Devices.
This episode, Devices, is written by J.J. Abrams and Josh Reams, the creators of the show. This will be the last episode that J.J. gets a writing credit on before he jumps ship to whatever else was going on in 2010. And, you know, as we've been talking about this show, I've been saying, like, I remember watching this show and really loving it and, like, wondering why it didn't catch on. And I do think that this episode kind of shows why it didn't. And it's because the formula is very set now, where we spend so much time on this mission of the week setup, where, like, we open with these bad guys kidnapping this guy out of, like, a mental place, it seems like. And then throughout, we get, like, a lot about this code breaker and this machine that they're looking for. And to be honest, whenever our main characters aren't on screen, I do not give a flying fuck about what is happening. And so it's like, in Alias, a lot of the setup of the spy espionage stuff tied into a larger arc. SD6, or, like, Double Cross, or, you know, some world-ending event. And a lot of these stories of the week seem to be a little bit lower stakes. And whenever we're just dealing with faceless Russian super spy gangster types, I'm kind of starting to check out. And I know that was by design of the show. They wanted it to be where if you weren't watching every week, you could just tune in like a Law and Order and you're going to get a story from A to B. But they spend so much time with the bad guys at the start and in the middle of each episode that I'm like, well, if the first 10 minutes of your show, the leads are barely in it because you're setting up the MacGuffin of the week, I kind of understand why people called bullshit on that and pulled the plug. But that being said, the first scene with Steven and Samantha in this episode is so much fun. I love that we see them fooling around in the morning, and we still see that even though they've both got, you know, their perfect bodies, there's not a drop of sweat on them as they've finished making love in the morning. But I love that they do this and they're having their cute banter, and we know that, like, they're still hot for each other and they're, you know, doing this sexpionage. And then they walk into the kitchen and Shaw is there, and we're like, how long has he been here? Has he been waiting while they're screwing, like, just killing time? And I thought that was really, really fun. And I just love the dynamic when you get those three people in a room. That's where the magic of the show is. Like I said, anytime Steven and Samantha are playing or interacting with people, I love that. But it's just, I started to realize, like, man, we spent so much time without them that must be the main reason this show kind of self-destructed by the end of this first season.
To address your question about the structure of the show so far, I found it really, really odd that the show keeps doing that. Because like you said, especially this episode spends a lot of time with the bad guys and a lot of time with the code breaker, who doesn't even speak English. He speaks Russian, I think, or some other language. And the code breaker guy doesn't come off as a character that we should care about either, because apparently this guy has some control issues, and that's why he was in a mental institution. And the only thing we know about him is that he likes to eat jelly beans. If they restructured this episode to say that the Russian bad guy who they were chasing in this episode kidnapped this code breaker from his family, that would have made me care more than just having this guy be addicted to jelly beans and come out of a mental institution. And the other thing is that this guy, this codebreaker guy, didn't have anything to him. The only thing he had to him, again, is jelly bean things. But he goes from bad guy to bad guy, and he doesn't seem to care. And he does everything that they tell him right away. The only thing he cares about is his fucking jelly beans. So I'm like, this is really odd. And the other thing that I kept wondering is that why wouldn't they want to spend more time with Stephen and Samantha working out one of their main problems in this episode, in that at the beginning of the episode, they say, even though we're married, when we're on the job together, we're not going to let that affect what we do out there in the field. But once they get out there, it's a whole different story. So why didn't they spend some more time dealing with that and exploring why that happens and why they feel that way and what they're going to do about it? And the other thing, to go to one of your points about the briefing and being so fucking long, Shaw should have gave them the mission in their kitchen while he was eating the pancakes just one time. But the fact that he kept coming back, and the fact that he keeps coming back once they fuck up, I'm like, he doesn't have to come back. Let him talk on the phone to them. Why is he coming back if they fuck up? They should just go and fix up their fuck up without having to report back to Shaw. That was kind of like a little bit unnecessary, I thought.
Yeah, well, especially because when Shaw fires them mid-episode, and he's like, bringing you guys in was a mistake. Obviously, you've been out of the game too long. You aren't up to the standards. We know that they're not going to get fired in episode 3, right? So, like, if you had a scene like this later in the series, maybe I would believe that they might be fired and have to work their way back in. But it's the 3rd episode. I know that they are not going to be fired. I know that they're going to be in the right in the end. So it just kind of feels like wasted time, because it's a red herring that, like, no one is falling for. Nobody's going to think Stephen and Samantha are getting fired in episode 3. Otherwise, we don't have a show. What, are they just going to go back to catering? Like, there's no fucking way. But I did appreciate the fun spy moments are where this show really works. And so, you know, they get their mission, and we do get some fun scenes with the catering team, with the sister. Brad Grunberg gets a bigger scene in the beginning. And then we find out that this other guy who, like, I haven't really clocked before, is also trying to be like their main go-to guy. And so him and the sister are kind of, you know, frenemy sort of types at the catering company. And so because I love Makia Cox, I love seeing the sister get more responsibility and knowing that she's going to fuck up somehow, and just waiting so that by the end of the episode, when we find out how she fucked up, like, it's satisfying because we just know that that's her MO. But I like spending time with those people. I think that's fun. They go on their mission, and of course, Hoyt gets involved, and he's got a couple of great moments. I know that, you know, Bill Hoyt is a character that can go either way for you, but I love when he answers the door in his pajamas, and he gets shit for, like, the pajamas. And he's like, these are nice pajamas. This is 96% silk. And they're like, yeah, like, I can see through it right now. Like, put the mouse back in the house. I love that shit. And then there's a point later where Stephen is saying something that is not correct, and Samantha has a different viewpoint. And Bill says, I'm paraphrasing, he's like, I am never Team Samantha, but in this one instance, I gotta agree with your wife. He's like, I'm never not on your side, Stephen. Like, I will always pick you, but I think she's right. And moments like that are where, you know, letting Ben Schwartz cook is when I like this show, when it's fun and frothy. And then they bring Leo in, and I'm like, I fucking can't stand this dude. Like, I just don't care for that character at all. But then when him and Steven get a thing where they do the classic spy, like, let's run a Berlin, and we know that they have a history, so whatever they did in Berlin is what they're going to run now, and trying to cozy up to one of the bad guys by pretending they knew him from a strip club is a fun scene where, you know, Steven gets to just be all charm, and we get to see why he is a good spy. And he can ingratiate himself to this guy and try and weasel into this deal to figure out what the bad guys are buying, when the buy is going down, and then figure out how they can stop it.
Like Matt said, there were some really, really great things in here, and I do want to address, you know, our guy in the chair. I do want to address Hoyt for a minute. There are episodes that we've talked about early on where I've been like, Hoyt, you're a little bit too much, get out of my face. But there are moments in this episode, like Matt just said, when Hoyt answers his door and he's got this I mean, who thinks about showing up to work in pajamas, for God's sakes? I mean, that was just gold. But the other thing that I liked, when Leo shows up again and he gets to run the game with Steven, and they get to sort of find out some information about one of the bad guys that they're chasing, and hopefully this guy will lead them to the codebreaker guy, which they have to get in the first place. I really like that, like Matt said, we did see why Steven is such a legend in the CIA, and we did see Steven turn on the charm and be like a competent spy. But I also really like the fact that Steven sort of feels some disdain towards Leo still, because when he first shows up, Steven's like, ugh, why are you here? So I'm really glad that the writing team sort of carried that over from the pilot, because there's a lot of TV shows that would set that up for like 2 episodes, but then the characters who hate each other would forget that they hate each other, and they would be fine, and it would become status quo. So I like that that's still there, but I do hope that as the series goes on, they do become better, and they sort of get over the fact that they both screwed the same woman at some point. The other thing that I wanted to ask you, because we brought it up already, about the show being unbalanced, right? Not spending enough time with its leads and spending too much time with the bad guys. So do you exclusively think that the reason the show is like that is because at this point the show doesn't have a bigger fish like Alias did, or do you think it's something else?
I think it is kind of that. We had hints that there is a bigger game at play in that first episode, and we haven't revisited them. Like, do they know the real reason they've been recruited? No. And it's like, well, can we go back to that in some way? Because I need it. It's funny, they want it to be standalone. You don't need that. But I feel like if you tell me that Bad Robot is making this show, I need that. If I don't have it, then if I miss an episode and don't care, that's not good. And certainly nowadays, watching this 14 years later, every show will have a hook because of streaming and binging, and they want you to keep going. And every episode, even if it is fluff, has to feel important in the moment. So, when you watch a 10-episode season on any Netflix show, there will always be breadcrumbs that keep you going, even if at the end of the season you realize 5 of these episodes meant fucking nothing, but they all had that little hints of stuff to keep you play next. And this show just doesn't have it so far. Part of the problem is that it is so tropey that I feel like they thought that would be an easy way to hook people because it's familiar ground that we're treading, but it actually makes me kind of think it's a little bit lazy. Like, this episode is about a knock list. This is about, what if the knock list gets out? And it's like, okay, well, I've seen that 800 times on 800 spy shows. And then when they recover the device, and this isn't the device, and then they're like, oh my God, the code breaker is a person. Well, that's also tropey as fuck too. Every spy thing has done a thing where they thought they were after a device and it ended up being a person. So I'm like, I need you to pump the brakes on these archetypes and these plot red herring tropes if I'm going to get invested. And especially, it's so early that I'm like, they're going to the knock list in episode 3? Like, that's one of the textbook spy missions that I thought, like, this show could come up with some more creative shit before we deploy that.
I'm so glad that you brought up the tropiness of the show so far, because another thing that I was thinking throughout this entire episode, I'm like, you guys just lifted the plot of Mission Impossible, the original Mission Impossible from 1996. Because this is seriously?
Yeah.
but also to address your points about the show being sort of paint by numbers at this point. I was actually sitting there going, okay, the show's paint by numbers to a point. You're spending too much time with the bad guys. Okay, I'll give you that. But instead of doing that, why don't you, like you mentioned it there, it's a Bad Robot show, so we are missing the box. We're missing the magic box. And what if the magic box, I mean, this is me spitballing now, but what if the magic box was learning more about Steven and Samantha before they met each other? What if the reason that they're called back to the agency is because of something that neither of them have told the other one?
Yeah, I think you're right. If we had more backstory that was somehow important in the present, and not to get too like, I wish this show was Lost, where we would have, context relevant flashbacks, but you just wish there was a way that we could spend more time with these people. And if it's not in the present on the current mission, then just bait the hook a little bit better. And even going back to the catering company more often for those light moments would do a lot. Because, as I said, when the main leads are on, their chemistry is hot. Gugu's one of the most beautiful people on the planet. Every time she's on the screen, I'm captivated. But there's just a lot of downtime and a lot of familiarity that I'm like, I need you to break the mold in some way to show me that this show is worth investing in. And I do think that was the barrier to entry, was they tried to make it too accessible, and it actually just meant that there wasn't enough meat on the bone for people to latch onto.
The other thing that I would love to see them do is, for some reason, I want their catering company to be involved in an episode. So I want them to go undercover as the catering company. And if they do that, they gotta bring everybody with them. And if they bring everybody with them, do you realize how complicated a mission like that would be? Because not only do they have to do the job, but they gotta hide from everybody else.
Right. And that would be the perfect setup where Lizzie's going to keep fucking shit up. And so then we got to see how Steven and Sam navigate Lizzie to keep the mission on track. Because we know Lizzie will fuck a guy at a funeral if she feels like it, right? So if we had a mission where the catering company was involved and that was the cover, and then you have Lizzie bouncing around like a pinball in a pinball machine, and Sam and Steven trying to keep her from tanking the whole thing, that's going to be fun. So I do, and like I said, this show now is almost 15 years old. I don't remember, even though I watched all the ones that aired when they aired. I don't remember if that happens, but you feel like it's got to at some point.
Yeah, I mean, look, I remember very, very little about the show, like I said in weeks past. But I'm not overly disappointed by this episode. I'm not mad at it. I'm just going, this is it? Like, this is a Bad Robot show. Come on, guys, give me something here.
Yeah, it's a perfectly fine episode. And in fact, taking a look at IMDb, this episode got a 7.2 out of 10, which is actually in the upper tier of episodes of this show. Kind of the highest rated episode is an 8.0, but most of them are hovering around 7, and 7.2, 7.3, 7.4 is kind of the benchmark. So this is in their like top rated in terms of general public opinion kind of episodes.
Right. And the other thing that was not disappointing, but it was a little bit shocking that this could happen. Like Matt said, this episode was written by the creators of the show. So the fact that the creators of the show wrote something so vanilla doesn't give me hope for the writing staff who's going to take over the gig after this episode.
The way that they tackled the show might have just been the wrong way, because there's nothing production-wise, it looks fine. And this episode is directed by Tucker Gates, who is, a Bad Robot alum who did lots of episodes of Alias and Lost. And Ed is a guy who is a steady hand behind the camera. And it's just the spy stuff is just kind of flat. There's just nothing that pops in a way that you're like, shit, on Monday at 10, I gotta be watching this. Which is just too bad, because most Bad Robot shows have that hook that gets you.
Yeah, I mean, look, even our beloved Felicity. I mean, that's way before the Magic Box and the Mystery Box thing. But even Felicity had hooks in it that kept you coming back week to week to week to week to week to week to week. If you were in the writers' room for the show almost 15 years ago, what would be your pitch to the writers to spruce it up here?
I think if we can find a way to spend less time with the faceless bad guys every week and make the central thing that they're after more important to their life in general. If we can find a way to do that in some way, then it's going to be a better show. So I don't necessarily think that it has to be a mystery box show, but I just need some greater through line that keeps me going. And even if the briefings from Shaw give us a lot of the groundwork, then I'm fine with that. Unfortunately, usually you want to show, don't tell. But in this instance, I'm like, if he just told us what had happened rather than spending 6 minutes of watching the bad guys do it, I'm completely fine with it. If he just shows up and says, they kidnapped a scientist, you got to rescue them, rather than watching 8 minutes of the scientist do science and then get kidnapped, I'm completely fine with that, because I'd rather spend time with the characters I care about rather than the bad guys of the week.
Yeah, I mean, I really like that idea because this show lends itself to be a exploding tape show. An exploding tape show is a reference to my favorite franchise of all time, Mission. And, and Shaw is basically the exploding tape. So if we have him come in, we can say, okay, guys, this is your mission. Do you accept it or don't you? That would be great. And they could use the rest of the time to fill out Sam and Steven as characters. And they could even do some really cool stuff with Hoyt and Leo that you don't like very much. They could take that bag of dicks and make him into a nice guy. Oh, look, I'm not saying that they're going to do that, but they could.
They definitely could. And I think we'll have to see, because I know that there are going to be some tweaks to the formula as it goes. And unfortunately, it's probably going to, well, we know it's too little too late. But I am hyped to see the 2 episodes that didn't air because I've never seen them. And on IMDb, the highest rated episode is what ended up being the series finale. So I'm wondering if by the time we get to episode 13, if I'm going to be sad that they canceled this, because I was in 2010, I was sad, but now I'm like, and I hate when this happens on the podcast. I'm like, why did I care? And so I hope that they'll win me back, that by the time we wrap, 10 weeks from now, I'll be like, okay, yeah, I am mad that they canceled this. Bring it back, NBC, you dumb bastards.
Yeah, but to be fair, just a quick note, guys. When we choose shows to talk about here on Radio 15, we go in with all positivity. We did that for What About Brian? We did that for 11/22/63. Unfortunately, it just didn't work out that way.
Well, and it's funny because you had seen 11/22/63 and had fond memories of it, and I had never seen it. And I had seen What About Brian and had fond memories of it, and you had never seen it. And then I was just like, why did I like this so much? Like, I remember loving this show, and now I just don't know why.
Yeah, I mean, look. I mean, I can tell you right now, I'm having way more fun with this show than I did with our discussion series about What About Brian. So I don't think that the show is going to reach that level of vitriol for me. But I'm really excited to see the highest rated episode, which is the finale episode 13. I'm sorry. And yeah, so we'll have to check that out in a couple weeks. But with that being said, I think that wraps up this edition of Radio 815. Listen, guys, if you like us and if you like the show that we put on here and you want to reach out to us, you can send us an email. We are at radio815@aol.com. If you send us an email over there, we'll give you a shout out on the show. Or if you have any suggestions about what we could talk about in the future, we will take that into advisement. That's the best I can tell you. But if you want to reach out to us and share our show around, we are on X. We are at JJ Universe 815. You can reach out to us there. And I'm very happy to announce we are now on Discord. So wherever you're watching or listening to this episode, in the description of wherever you're watching this, there'll be a link to all of our social media accounts, and one of those links will be our link to our Discord server. If you go over there and you like Discord and you use Discord, you'll be primarily interacting with me. So come over there and join our Discord community and make us look cool on Discord. So yeah, but guys, if you want to catch Matt and his adventures online, Matt, where can they do that?
We can log some movies on Letterboxd, letterboxd.com/MDC3000.
Awesome. And guys, if you want to catch me and my adventures, you can catch everything I do on Twitter or X. I'm at CreekFanatic88, but thank you so much for watching and listening to our show. But until next time, as I say often, we'll talk back soon.
Radio 815 is a Balloonhead Productions presentation in association with Killer Newt Productions.